Well, good morning and Happy New Year. My name's Adam Hildebrand. I get to be one of the pastors here at LVfirst, and it is such a joy to be with all of you this morning. Whether you're joining us here in person or you're joining us online, we're excited to start this new year together. I'm excited about everything that 2025 holds, and I hope you are as well. We've got big plans, big opportunities, big dreams here for this church, for this community, and we'd love for you to be a part of that. If you're new here this morning, let me just extend a special welcome to you. So glad you're here. So glad you're a part of worship. We'd love to get to know you, to hear a little bit of your story, and for us to have an opportunity to share a little bit of ours. You're going to hear a little bit about who we are and what we're all about during the message today, but we would love to share with you some of the ways that you can get connected, involved, and be about the work that we're doing here at LVfirst as we continue to put this community first, as we continue to put Lawrenceville first. It's really exciting to see. As we kick off this new year, we're going to be talking about this idea of prodigal. We're going to work through the Gospel of Luke, chapter 15. For the next 2 months, we're going to be stuck in Luke. So I hope you like the Gospel of Luke, because that's where we're going to be January and February. January, we're going to spend our whole month just talking about Luke 15. We're going to talk about this story of the prodigal son in lots of different ways. And I hope this is helpful for all of you as you're thinking about the new year, about who God is inviting you to be, about where God is inviting you to get involved. And I just hope this is unique and special for you as we think about this word prodigal. Prodigal doesn't actually mean what I think sometimes we think it means. Like generally when you use the word prodigal, we're talking about somebody in our family who didn't do the thing that they were supposed to do. Right? Like in every family, there's somebody that we would kind of refer to as the prodigal, right? The one who didn't go the route that everybody thought they would go, the one who kind of marked their own trail, the one who maybe didn't do everything the way their parents asked them to do. We kind of think of that person as prodigal. But the word prodigal literally means excessive or lavish. Excessive or lavish. So yes, the son who goes off is excessive and lavish, but in the story, there are lots of prodigals. And in the whole chapter in Luke 15, there's lots of examples of prodigals. There's the older son who's so self-righteous that he's prodigal in his self-righteousness. And there's a God who sends his son Jesus, who is so prodigal, so excessive and lavish in the way that he loves, that he sends his son to share some really good news with all of us. So as we think about this new year with all of its possibilities, with all of its hopes, with all of our dreams and all of the things that we can live into, the question we have to ask ourselves is, how can we really get the most out of this year? How can we live life the way that Jesus invites us to live life in John 10:10, to live life to the fullest? I think there's something in Luke's gospel in chapter 15 that might help us to think about the way that we're living. Because for most of us, the new year marks a new season, and we kind of think about some different things that we'd like to do. You know, whether we call them resolutions or we call them intentions or we have a word for the year, or we're just the people who are like, no, I'm not going to make resolutions. I've done that in the past and that's never worked out, so I'm not going to do it. Even those folks, you know, we still have some things that we hope for the new year. A new year kind of marks opportunities for us to think about the last year and to think about some of those things that we might not have accomplished. Some of those things that we put out there, some of those things that we thought about, some of those things that we might have lost along the way. I don't know if you know this, but there's all this research has been done around when people generally give up their New Year's resolution. There's lots of research, especially based on your smartwatches and those of you who made fitness goals for the year. Generally, people give those up. 80% of people give those up on a certain date every year. It's called Quitter's Day. It's January 10th. January 10th. 80% of people give up their fitness goals by January 10th based on research done on smartwatches and people who log all of their information. And so all of the people who right now are at your gym taking up all the machines, don't worry. All of the people who are posting like workout photos on Facebook, don't worry. January 10th is coming, okay? All right? But there's a way to live beyond January 10th. There's a way to live beyond what the University of Scranton discovered. Like, that's a real university. It's not just from the office. The University of Scranton discovered a couple of years ago that 92% of people fail at their New Year's resolutions. Only 8% of people actually accomplish what they set out to accomplish. And I wonder if some of it has to do with the fact that we already feel like we've lost something. Like, most of us, when we think about what we're doing something that we've lost control of. Like, we want to do a new diet plan because we've lost control a little bit of our diet. We want to do an exercise plan because we've lost control of our fitness. We want to make sure that we make a budget this year because we've lost control of our finances. We want to get together with more people because we've lost a sense of connection to other people. Most of the things that we do come out of this sense of loss. And I think oftentimes we try the same things over and over and over again, and we get the same results. But nothing will be different unless we do different things. Like, I know that sounds simple, but it's just the reality. Nothing will be different unless we do different things. And so all of those things that we think about that we've lost, all of those things that we want to recover in our lives, all of those things that we want to get back in our lives, invite us to live a different way. Jesus talks about this before he tells the story of the prodigal son. Jesus actually tells two other stories that I think invite us to move towards the story of the prodigal son. We're going to unpack these together today. It starts in Luke chapter 15. It says this: "Now all the tax collectors and the sinners were coming near to listen to him." Him is Jesus in this sense. All the tax collectors and the sinners. So all of the people that you wouldn't think you would see in church are all coming close to Jesus. It's like Christmas Eve, Easter, and New Year's. All the people that you never see in church, all of a sudden, they're hanging out with Jesus. Okay? They're all there with Jesus. And it seems like people who are nothing like Jesus, and Jesus liked them too. And so Jesus is there with all of these people who you would not expect to want to be near Jesus because they were like on purpose sinners. They did things wrong on purpose. They were tax collectors. They steal from people. They take from people. And then all the other sinners, like tax collectors, had their own special bracket. They're there listening to Jesus. And check this out. And the Pharisees and the scribes, like the good church people, the people who had it all together, or at least wanted everybody to think that they had it all together, they were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." So it's in this context that Jesus tells three different parables about things that are lost and become found, about things that we hope for that are renewed and redeemed. So he tells them this parable. He says this: "Which of you, having 100 sheep and losing just one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? And when he found it, he lays it on his shoulders and rejoices. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and his neighbors, and he says to them, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost.' And just so," Jesus says, "I tell you that there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over the 99 righteous persons who need no repentance." Jesus jumps in and begins to tell this story to take stock of the things that we have lost in our community, in our connection, in our church, in our community at large. We've all experienced something that we've lost. There's something that we would hope to regain in this new year. There's something that we would hope that we could find in this new year, both here together as a church, but also at the larger community. There are things that we need to regain. There are things that need to be found among us, because things have gotten lost along the way. So Jesus tells this story about the sheep, which for all of us, we're like, "Oh yes, sheep, of course. very familiar with sheep. None of us are familiar with sheep, right? None of us have sheep. We don't think about sheep all the time. This story for us is hard to relate to. In fact, we're like, okay, what's the difference between 99 sheep and 100 sheep? Like, it's not that big a deal. It's just a sheep, right? Sheep aren't that, for us, we're like, no big deal. No big deal. Like, we live in excess sometimes in our culture. And so, like, we kind of think, like, it's just one sheep. It's just one sheep out of 100 sheep. How much can a sheep be worth? I'll buy him a new sheep. I'll tell you what. I'll just get you a new sheep. How about that? But this was a huge deal in their culture. Jesus asked this one long question that assumes an answer. Well, of course you would go after that sheep. That sheep is valuable. That sheep matters. That sheep is a big deal for the flock. Of course, you would take the risk of leaving the flock and going after this one sheep who is lost. You would want to bring that sheep back to be a part of the fold. You would want to go and find what's lost and bring it back so that it can experience redemption, so that it can connect to the community. Think about it this way. Like, sometimes I think we console ourselves by thinking about what's not lost. Right? So we're like, oh, at least we've got 99 sheep. And we don't want to risk the 99 sheep because of that one sheep. We don't want to do that. Especially in church, we can kind of get that way. We're like, well, we don't want to lose the people that we have because we're busy going after the people that we don't have, or we don't want to lose what we've got because we're busy trying to experience redemption or find something new that allows us to connect more with our community. We don't want to lose something. But we've already lost something. It's like this. If I take my 3 kids shopping and I come home with 2 of them, my wife does not say, well, at least you brought home 2 of them. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Of course not. And all dads know the intrinsic fear of losing a kid, where we're like frantic about finding the kid, but we're way more frantic about having to tell our spouse that we lost one of our kids. Like, we're way more worried about that. And so when we find the kid, we're excited about finding the kid, but the first thing that we say is what? Don't tell your mom, right? Just don't tell your mom about this. We can't console ourselves by counting on what's not lost in our life. Well, at least I've got this. Well, at least I've got this. The thing that is lost is the thing that needs to be found. It's the thing that needs to be redeemed. It's the thing that needs to be brought back into the fold, into our lives, into our connection. This was an incredible rebuke for those Pharisees and those religious people listening to Jesus. Not just because Jesus is like, hey, these are exactly the people that y'all should be talking to. Like, you should connect with these people. They've lost something. They've lost a sense of connection. They've lost a sense of hope. They've lost a sense of redemption. They don't feel like they're good enough to be a part of the flock anymore. And so they're over here like, let's work together on this. But more importantly, all of the Pharisees and the scribes would have heard Ezekiel 34 in the background, this scathing rebuke that the prophet Ezekiel gives to the religious leaders of his day, saying that they've been terrible shepherds and that God's people are scattered because they haven't done what they should have done. They haven't cared for the people. And so because they haven't done what they were going to do, God is going to show up. God is going to seek what's lost. God is going to go after those sheep that have been scattered. On account of their unfaithfulness, God himself will seek out the sheep, rescue them, and care for them. That's what Ezekiel 34 says. And so all of the scribes and the Pharisees would have heard this in the background. And if you're here this morning and you feel like you've been scattered, that you feel like you've been lost, that you feel like there's something in your life that can never be found again, I've got great news for you. God goes seeking after the places that are lost, after the people that are lost, After the people who feel like they can't put everything back together because it's too broken, it's too scattered, it's too all over the place. And the church doesn't always do a great job of reminding people of that. You are never too lost to be found. That nothing is beyond God's work of redemption. That's why Jesus tells these stories, to remind us that in this new year there are all sorts of new possibilities, and one of those new possibilities is that we can find that thing that we've lost. And our role in the world, our work as a church, is not just to tend to the flock, but to go after those things that have wandered off. Go after those people who feel like they've been abandoned and scattered. To find ways to connect and love and to share God's good news with them. And if you have any doubt about what we're doing here, about what we're about at this church, when we say we're putting Lawrenceville first, that's what we mean. I mean that there are lots and lots and lots of people in our community who need to hear the good news that they are never too lost to be found. That whatever feels scattered and broken in their lives is never too far gone to be redeemed. That there is hope. That's what we're talking about. And that we're willing to leave the perceived safety of our church islands and commit ourselves to doing what Jesus himself said he came to do, to go and to seek and to save that which has been lost, and to bring it back into connection. And sometimes, just like with everything that we do that's difficult, with every resolution or intention or word that you have for the year, it's going to involve saying no to ourselves sometimes in order to say yes to something better. In order to say yes to someone who feels scattered, who feels disconnected. And look, there are lots of things that are lost in our lives and in our community. There are lots of things that are even lost in our church at times, within our church body. I think sometimes we lose this missional impulse, this idea that we need to go and to seek and to be a part of bringing about redemption in those things that are lost, that we can do the work that God has called us to do. And sometimes it's as simple as just having an invitational spirit. I love the way this story goes. The guy goes and he finds the sheep and he brings it back and he calls all his friends together and says, let's celebrate. Let's celebrate because something that was lost is now found. That thing that was broken is now put back together. That the community is more whole because we've found this sheep that had wandered off. And what we do here on Sunday morning should be a celebration of what God is doing to put things back together in all of our lives. And that should be the easiest thing in the world for us to invite people to. Hey, we're having a celebration for lost things that are found. And I know, we don't want to, we come up with all sorts of excuses. I don't have any friends that don't go to church. All my friends go to a church. They're all involved in a church. Yeah. Okay, sure. Or I don't want to make it awkward. Look, I invite people all the time. And it's super awkward for me. I know you think it's my job, it's pastor, it's his job. But it's really weird for me to be like, hey, why don't you come to my church? The preacher's really good. One, I never ever say that, just to be clear. If I invite, when I invite people to our church, I'm like, hey, come and, we've got great children's ministry, we've got great student ministry, we've got great connections and opportunities for people to learn more about who God is and find a place. We've got incredible mission opportunities. We're serving our community in incredible, amazing ways. God is doing work through the work that you all are doing. That's what I talk about. I invite them to come and see the lights. To come and to celebrate what God is doing in and through you. and the work that you're doing to bring about redemption. We've lost the sense sometimes of connection, I think, as a community. Both connection within the community and with the larger community. And we need to go and search for that and to bring it back. Because there is this loneliness epidemic that everyone is talking about and that we have the solution to. That's what we should be about, is building connections with people, building relationships with people. We can solve this problem. This is a problem that we can deal with. Well, I think one of the best opportunities is what Adam was talking about up here earlier. Our Parents First initiative. What a great way to get involved. What a great way. Look, if you're a parent, if you're a grandparent, if you're a caregiver, you should take this class. Michelle and I took this class. Fantastic. We built great connections with other parents. We feel more supported as parents. We feel like we got more tools in the toolbox. We feel like a broader sense of community. And that's really the goal, is to build community. And you can be a part of that. Whether it's serving at the class or taking the class, you're going to meet people who you wouldn't have met otherwise. You're going to build community connections. And we're going to fight an epidemic of loneliness and parent overwhelm. We can put those things back together. We can reconnect those things. We can care for one another deeply. Look, if, Deanne's our pastor of care, like if she's the only one that cares, we're not doing our job. Like that's all of our jobs, is to care for one another, to find places where we can connect to one another, to reestablish those connections, to seek what's lost. Jesus goes on, tells another parable. He goes from 100 sheep to 10 coins. He says this in verse 8, or what woman, having 10 silver coins, if she loses one of them, does not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? And when she's found it, she calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I had lost. And just so I tell you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. I like this parable even more than the first one because it's a little bit stronger, right? You go from 100 things to 10 things, and now we kind of feel the tension. Right? This lady has 10 silver coins, and for most of us, we're like, coins, who cares? Like, I drop them into the black hole of my car, they're gone. Right? Between the seats, I'm never getting that coin back. If it's $1, that's a different story. But the coin, you let it go. But this is a full day's wage for this woman. A full day's wage. Look, if I lost a full day's wage, you better believe I'm going to find where that went. And so are you. But more importantly, I think what's more important about this parable is she doesn't just say, well, it'll just show up. Right? A lot of us kind of live our lives that way, and we think about the things, the work that we're doing, and the possibilities that we have, and the connections that we need to build, and the work that we need to do in our own lives, and the work that we want to invite God to do in our lives. We're like, it'll just happen when it happens. Like we feel like we've lost our prayer life or our devotional life or a sense of community or connection or a small group. And we're like, when it's time, it'll just happen. No, it won't. It won't just happen. We won't just stumble upon it. This woman makes a plan and works the plan. Right? She lights a lamp. She sweeps the house, and she looks until she finds it. We have to have a plan. Because when we're not intentional about our actions, our lack of intention leads to inaction. If we're not intentional about it, we won't do anything. Wait and hope. Hope it turns up. Look, I'm all for hope, but hope is not a plan, okay? Hope is fuel for your plan. You should have hope. You should always have hope, but it should be fuel for the plan that you are working. We have to take action. Light a lamp, sweep the house, come up with a plan to do what needs to be done to find what's lost. If you want something to look different in this next year, you have to take action. Now, Jesus tells these two stories to kind of set up the story of the prodigal son. Kind of think about what we've lost and what needs to be found. So I want to ask you this question. What's been lost in your life? What's been lost? What's been lost in your family? What's been lost in your neighborhood that needs to be found? What's been lost in our city that needs to be found? What's been lost in our church that needs to be found? What's been lost in your own spiritual life that needs to be found? Because we can end up like those Pharisees and scribes, just complaining about what's happening over there and how much attention, this ministry or that ministry or this thing or that thing is getting. And if we're muttering, y'all, we're sputtering. Like, that's the reality. Like, we don't need to spend energy doing that. Because the celebration in heaven that Jesus talks about is not for us having a perfectly timed, nice, neat worship service that ends on time, like this one is not going to. My bad. It doesn't say that there's a celebration in heaven that angels dance because we have a perfect Robert's Rules of Order administrative meeting. It doesn't say that there's a celebration for having more Bible knowledge than the church down the street. Jesus says there is celebration in heaven when what is lost is found. What is scattered is put back together. What is broken is redeemed. And as we move into this year, what I want more than anything, what I'm committed to, is to seeking what's lost. So much so that we wear those angels out. I want them to be like, what is that church doing? Where they're seeking out all of these broken places and they're allowing God's work to redeem those things. They're going after what's lost in their community and we're having to celebrate all the time. They need to calm down. They're having so many baptisms. They're having so many professions of faith. They're seeing new people join their church. Because they're seeking what's lost and allowing God to do the work of redemption. And look, I said it before, I'm going to say it again. If you're here this morning and you have felt lost or scattered or misplaced, I want you to hear that you are never too lost to be found. What's broken is never too broken to be put back together. God is seeking redemption. And we want to celebrate it with you when it happens. So 3 things I hope over the next couple of weeks, throughout this next year. That you would find your place. That you would find your place in the kingdom of God. That you would find your place in the house of God. That you would find your place with Jesus. And more people would find a place in the kingdom of God. That you would find your people. that you would find a connection to some others that you can live life with, that you can be encouraged by, that you can pray with, that you can even complain to, that you can just talk to, that you can connect with, that you can grow with, that you can learn the Bible with, that you can do life with. I want you to find your people here. And then last, I want you to find your purpose through serving someone else, through finding a place where you can serve. I don't know what you're looking for this year. I don't know what's been lost in your life. But I know this, that this is a place where you can be found, where things can be put back together. This is the kind of place where you can find a sense of purpose and possibility. You can find what you need because you've been found even in your need by a Savior who shows up to tell us this amazing story.